That's a lot of money. And in some ways, it can't really continue to come out of the NIH research budget, or at least it's going to be hard to sustain that. So, given those three things, I'm going to make a modest proposal. What publishers could do in order to actually be worth paying them money would be to hire and train expert annotators to take the product of we academics as authors and semantically enrich them in ways that were valued to us as academics, as readers of each other's work. And it's expensive. It requires skill sets that you're going to have to find out there in the community, and it requires high-quality ontologies that you may have to pay to help develop. Now, if you guys actually did that, I would go to my library and say, pay those subscription fees. Where instead, I'm going to my academic senate and insisting on an open access rule that nobody from my university, like nobody from, was it University College London, I think, and MIT have adopted policies that say open access publishing only. And that's only part of the problem. I don't love the author pays model either, by the way. But anyway, that's my suggestion.
Well, I think the publisher members of the panel should feel free to come back on any of those points if they want. Sure, I think Larry, they're not violent read on.
Yeah, I'm like the edge of the stage, I was afraid Dan's going to call me off.
Okay. So our last panelist is Colin Batchelor, who's an informatics research and development team leader at the Royal Society of Chemistry. He's particularly interested in natural language processing, chemical entity recognition, and rhetorical analysis. Colin's involved in ontology development and committees of IUPAC and WTC. Colin.
Okay, thanks to Larry for the lead in there. I'm going to touch briefly on what he said, and also say what we found we kind of need from ontology developers or people who are in the space in between ontology development and natural language processing. Okay, so since all of you deal with code and handling files and data all the time, I'll just show you briefly the kind of data that you deal with inside a publisher. You get papers submitted by authors, and they're converted into XML by magic. And then people who have been traditionally editors and proofreaders, and they are still doing that role, work on the XML. And now they're doing something which is very similar to the biocuration role for our enhanced papers, except it's for chemical structures and information about chemistry. And this is only possible because of being able to do a certain amount of it through text mining and a collaboration with the University of Cambridge and the group that Nico is in has been terribly helpful. Now, from that XML, you can generate whatever you like. I've put up there web pages, RSS feeds, and PDFs, but really, one could start processing it in the kind of ways that Alan is interested in principle. I'll come to issues with that. Just a figure about casual browsing, which people mentioned. 90% of our readers are still going directly to the PDF. So we have to so all this work has to be justified in two ways. We need to say to our bosses and the people who give us money for doing this, that while it may only be 10% of people who are reading the enhanced version, or 50% in the case of our systems biology journal, which is a bit different from the other ones, this stuff can help people get to PDFs that they didn't know about. So, where are we now? I don't know how many of you recognise this. This is a Greek poem. It's not a very long Greek poem, and it's probably not all of it. And there was a translation done of this. And this upset a lot of classicists because they say, Era doesn't actually mean spring. But the thing is that this translation doesn't mean anything either. Even the correct version of the poem, such as we have it, even if those are complete words, it doesn't mean anything. Meaning does not reside in words, it resides in sentences, and we're not at that stage yet. Okay? So, I got into the OLO ontologies because they are the kind of ontologies we can work with. They have human readable definition. which is massively helpful if you're a curator. So if you come across a thing that says epithelial cell, and you have no idea what an epithelial cell is, you need the definition. We have names as they appear in text with meaningless IDs. It's all nice and good and friendly and cuddly. But the big challenge is polysemy. So just as the word banana can stand for a fruit, or mashed fruit, or a kind of leaf, or a woven leaf that you make a chair out of, all that kind of thing, you get the same thing with chemical structures. And so what we have had to do is work out for chemical ontology ways of pre-processing the ontology so that these different natural kinds are identified. And then once we've gone through the text mining with string matching, post-process that so we can assign the right meaning of benzene, whether it's benzene the molecule, or benzene the stuff, or benzene a kind of benzene a molecule containing the benzene ring. And as for meaning, there's a twofold challenge of events. Now, one of them is actually getting these sentences, pulling out events. So we need to be able to identify semantic roles. If there isn't a current, we need to know what semantic roles in that current are. We need to know how these semantic roles map onto verb subcategorization in English. And we need to have strategies for dealing with prepositional ambiguity, which is quite a problem. The other thing, and this is, my criticism of the semantic web is that it doesn't really have any semantics on it, is that there's been very little work done on disseminating event statements. Now, David tells me that the C.CRM people have done this, and Don Davidson had a nice paper about this in 1967. But otherwise, I don't know a lot of material. Adobe have a good approach. And I will finish on the challenge of discourse. We need, in order to do all these nice things, summarization and so forth, identify which bits of the paper are actually the author's contribution. Discourse isn't going to go away. We're not going to be able to replace a paper with a spreadsheet listing, here are the entities of that. People still use hedging and things to distance themselves from claims they don't want to make yet, because they might not get through the peer review process. So I'm involved in a project to try and automate this discourse analysis. So these are a few things which tickle me and hopefully tickle some of you.
Okay, thanks a lot. So there have been several threads in those introductions. I think, Peter, you summed it up nicely by saying that there's conflicts and it's difficult to know the right way to approach all the many problems and there are many possible solutions. I just wanted to take a very simple, it's almost too simple a point, but just this basic question about who should be marking out text in what way. So just to maybe do a quick poll of how you feel at the moment. See if my guess is it's going to be right. So we're just thinking very specifically on, an author has something to communicate. They do it in a journal article. At that point, at that publication point, should it be semantically enriched? The alternative is that actually the semantic enrichment, or the bulk of it, happens at a later stage in the more kind of use case situation, just as like the modern organisms and databases are curating articles post-publication for particular purposes. So can we do a quick stick up of hands of people who think that the bulk of the semantic markup should be done at the time of publication? We're not considering about by who at the moment.
Semantic markup during the publication or post-publication? Is that the choice?
That's the choice. So now you're putting your hands up if you think it should be done at the time of publication.
So can we take a poll of how many people after that, how many people think that's actually possible? After they say they don't?
Well, then I was going to ask who they thought should do it, but we can carry on asking questions all night. But okay.
So there's no benefit to delay, right? Does anybody want it to be slower? So no. So I think that's it. But the problem is doing it at the point of publication requires somebody capable of doing it at that point in a model that gets it paid for. And if there's some benefit in delaying a little bit and getting a better job or making it cheaper or something, we'll probably swallow that. But I don't think anybody wants it to be any later.
Few cycles.
We can only do a certain amount of markup in a certain use case scenario. So some specialist markup happens later, but you want. Okay.
The key point here is computer assistant is not natural. So if you want authors to do any kind of semantic markup, you have to have an application on their machine that interacts with whatever text functions they use, and that does half markup, then they may edit it. They will not start it from scratch. I'll give you one example. There's an object called Pacam, which deals with unique identifiers of persons and chemicals on the web. And they do apps that if you download one document and recognize the person, you will link it up with the database, and it will suggest the names or see people who the refer to. It also says this is it, and the document will have insured a unique ID for that person document. That kind of application, we have it, will work. And if we don't have it, forget about the alpha marker.
Okay.
So I work in this all the time, we do organizations as well as colleagues, and I think that what we're talking is there's too much complexity in the question you're asking here, because there's what I would rather call metadata, which would be IDs for which entities that we talked about in the statement, which assets are being used in the statement, that rightly the author should be providing. The complexity of applying a particular geontology terminology to the paper is something the authors do not understand. And so there are really several tiers to this. And so there's some that the author should be doing and some that they shouldn't be doing. But the amount of time that we're asking expert post-PhD curators to identify entities in the papers is absurd. And I'm just at that level, trying to get some importance at that level.
So the basic entity, right? The most basic
What
information.
genes, proteins,
Organisms.
organisms. Let me just do my favorite.
Okay, well, I think we've got just move on.
Can I throw a spanner in the works and say, before we even decide that question, there's a more important question that we have to settle, and that's access to these things. What's the point of having access to the papers, the materials? What's the point of having something semantically marked up that I can't then access and I can't use the markup? When we try to access, just to give you a little anecdote, one of our PhD students, to do an exercise in post-publishing markup, like natural language processing, had bookmarked 20 papers from one publisher, and it was the American Chemical Society, in his browser. Firefox has a setting that allows you to open all your bookmarks at the same time. He accidentally hit that button and opened 20 papers at the same time. Not 10 minutes later, the American Chemical Society had cut off the access to the journal in question for the whole university. It took us a day to
And there are scientific societies.
They are scientific systems. So if we have markup, then we need to have either access to the markup, or we need to have access to the paper. Then we can settle the question when we do the access. Some of it can be done a posteriori by people that are interested in a particular type of markup. Something can be done by the public.
Okay, so let's try. I think there's some interesting points here. So I'd like to bring the panel in before we have Jim's points going on.
I'd just like to share a very short anecdote about that. There was a gentleman at Northwestern University who was hitting one of our scientific publishing sites and just downloading a ton of papers. And this sort of went up the food chain, and he got to the desk of one of our senior vice presidents, and he thought, boy, this is interesting. So we called this gentleman up and said, what are you doing? And he said, well, I'm actually trying to do some social network analysis around authors of papers. So our VP, James Pringle, said, well, how many papers do you want? And so in the end, we were able to package up some papers for him, and now we